Hello, welcome everybody to another installment of Biology in the Basement. And Draco wears a new hat segments. This hat is a hat that represents the wolf, which was specifically a guitar played by my hero, Jerry Garcia, in the 1970s, in which he created some of the most amazing music ever. So I wear this hat in salute to Jerry Garcia for this segment of Biology in the Basement. I got it all. I got it all. Just be careful. I am prepared. Okay, so jokes aside, today's purpose of this video is to go over really quickly what we talked about yesterday and then move right on into blood and the homeostasis side. Then on Friday, we will have a lab for you to do, which is related to specifically blood and making some blood diagnoses. So you'll get to play doctor with this lab. So let us begin your fact of the day so we can get started. All the late night hosts have been talking about this, and I find this interesting myself, and that is in Hong Kong, a pair of pandas have begun breeding unprovoked for the first time in 10 years. It took them 10 years to figure out maybe they should close down the park from humans for a little while, gawking at them and just smelling up the place and give them a chance to breed. Because like I always say, chemical communication is a very strong one in all animals, and maybe just the smell of other mammals around could have been a deterrent for them to reproduce all along. So, yay for panda sex, I guess. I don't know. Let's move on, right? I don't know if that's a clap event, but whatever. Wrong call, right? Okay. Anyways, let's get on with the instruction. Right? Circulatory system does its job in name. Circulate. Must move a lot of things to all the cells. We're talking nutrients, we're talking gas, we're talking water, we're talking hormones, we're talking antibodies, you name it. There's all kinds of stuff in your blood that is nourishing your cells, as well as removing wastes. If your cells have a high concentration of waste when the blood passes by, that waste is going to just diffuse right into your freshly cleaned blood. So it includes blood vessels or blood tubes and the heart as the pump. We won't go over all this stuff, but I did try to focus on why birds and mammals are able to be warm-blooded and why they call it warm-blooded, because we have a set of high-test blood running through our system separate from this low oxygenated high CO2 blood, giving us the ability to maintain a set temperature. We also look at the two circuits, one that goes from the lungs and back, one that goes from the cells and back. We looked at the two main types of tubes, arteries and veins. Arteries are thicker walled because they have the force of the heart coming behind them. Veins have thinner walls because there's not as much pressure. They also have valves in them which prevent the backflow of blood. We don't want to have the backflow of blood or the stoppage of blood because that causes internal clots. Internal clots are very bad. External clots, that protect your injuries are good. Internal clots, bad. The last type of blood vessel is what's called the capillary. The capillary is the smallest blood vessel. It is the point where blood meets cells. Okay, so blood meets cells at this point. This is the site of exchange of oxygen and nutrients that are in high concentration diffusing into these cells that have a low concentration. They've used up all their nutrients. They are full of waste products. So those waste products in high concentration diffuse back into the blood and back to the heart to get pumped to places where they get cleaned out, right? We talked about the bruise, and now on to the new stuff. Blood, right? Blood is what's called a fluid matrix, right? Is it a solution? Is it a suspension? Well, it's actually both. It has larger molecules suspended in it, but it also has smaller molecules, sugars, right? Amino acids, dissolved gases that are dissolved in it like a solution. So they don't call it a solution or a suspension. It gets a fancy name called the fluid matrix. Now, there are some important components of your blood that we focus on: red and white blood cells. They are the ones who carry the oxygen and CO2 from your lungs to the cells of the body and back. White blood cells, as hopefully you guys know, white blood cells are the big blood cells that fight off pathogens in your blood. Platelets, another important component of your blood. They're old, beat-up red blood cells and cell fragments that work to help in the clotting of blood. So when you do have a cut, these fragments of cells get hung up in this webbing, and you have a clot. So it's good to have some platelets kicking around in your blood. Of course, the most percentage component of your blood here, what contains the bulk of your blood in percent, I should say, is your plasma. Your plasma is the fluid portion of the blood. It is mostly water. This is where all of the dissolved gases and minerals and nutrients are found. This is also where hormones and antibodies and enzymes and vitamins are suspended in your fluid of your blood. And so, as you can see, this blood has been put in a centrifuge, was the correct answer, right? Where the most densest part is at the bottom. I'm sure you're thinking right now that the reason why the red blood cells are at the bottom is because red blood cells contain iron, is the correct answer, right? And so they would be found at the bottom. Your white blood cells are pretty big, and then we've just got our liquid portion that sits on the top. But this gives us an idea of what the percentages are. And so that's what your blood looks like. So how does your blood help to maintain homeostasis? It does it on many levels. We'll also talk about it again when we get to the excretory system, because that is also related to keeping your blood happy. So we'll look at it in terms of its big picture jobs, right? Where it regulates your body temperature. Your blood moves to the surface of your skin, right? You've all had red face and red skin after you've exercised. It's because your blood is moving towards the surface of your skin so that it can release that heat. It helps to regulate body temperature that way. Also, we close up our pores and our veins and arteries sink deeper into our tissues so that they can keep yourself warm. A big one that we've been focusing on then in this lecture is regulating nutrient levels. We want to keep the nutrients like amino acids, monosaccharides, right? These small lipid molecules high in concentration, and we want to keep our waste products, which we're going to start to focus on next, in a low concentration, including carbon dioxide. We also have things like antibodies and white blood cells in our blood that fight infection, as well as we work with our kidney, our liver, our lungs, and even our skin to regulate toxin levels. So there is a lot that your blood is responsible for, keeping your cells happy, but it also has to keep itself happy. Your blood is technically a tissue, right? It's a group of cells working together. And so your blood itself is a group of cells that also needs to be kept happy. And so luckily we have lots of organs that are in contact with your blood, making sure that they are happy. So what is clotting? Clotting is simply the hardening of blood to prevent blood loss. This is when you have a break in your blood tubes. And you don't want blood traveling out of the tubes. They need to get to where they have to go. So luckily we have mechanisms in place that are responsible for covering over injuries, and then your good old platelets and red blood cells will clog up that hole. We have these cool proteins called fibrin and elastin, I think are their names, where they stretch out over the injury like a web, and then the red blood cells and platelets form a clot by getting stuck in this web of sticky proteins. Of course, the message is sent that we need to carry out the process of mitosis to start building new cells, right? We can repair and replace the cells that are underneath this clot, and eventually the clot will be gone as a scab, right, where we've replaced those cells. We may not be able to regenerate, but we can repair our tissues that have been damaged. So that's what a blood clot is. I shared this document with you. There's going to be a worksheet that you're going to be assigned where we're going to have a little talk about how the blood travels through the body in two main circuits, but there are a lot of other stops to think about, especially now that we have been looking at some of these other organs, right? How do we get our nutrients into the blood? There's got to be an intersection of the digestive system into our bloodstream, right? How do we get oxygen into our blood? There's got to be an intersection of our lungs to our blood. How do we clean our blood? There has to be spots where these organs come in contact with our bloodstream so they can filter out things that are in our blood that are less desirable. And how do we get to the cells of the body, right? These are just general representations of where we come in contact with all the cells of our upper half and lower half of our body. This is your brain, your arms, your legs, your whole upper torso. This is your, not your legs, your legs and all of your organs of your lower trunk are represented by this weird little web here, in case you were wondering. And so this is what our circulatory system does. Okay, we'll get to the excretory system after we take a break. We will get to a worksheet and a lab over the next coming days. So, what I would like you to be doing for homework is page 162 and 163. Page 162 and 163 will be your homework for Thursday due Friday. And then on Friday, we'll take this blood information and set you loose on your first at-home pen and paper lab. So, from Biology in the Basement, this is Mr. Andraco signing off, hoping that you are being safe and having fun. We'll see you.